My name is Stingray. I'm one of the TAs for graphics this semester. To say a bit about myself, I didn't really start doing art until I got to high school. And what I have here are some pieces from back then that I particularly enjoyed. On the left is a piece about the human body and cybernetics, which is what got me into drawing the human form in the first place. Originally, I was born in Hawaii, but then I moved to Montana when I was about 2 and just grew up here. I came to MSU in 2016 as an engineering major, but within my first semester, I switched into architecture because I needed something more artistic and creative. When I took graphics, I combined what I already knew with what I was being taught to create some interesting drawings and paintings. Unfortunately, we're not going to do any watercolor paintings this semester, but these are some paintings that I did while I was still in the class. The one on the left is a copy painting from a photo, and the other two are from the Sculpture Park and St. Ignatius Chapel, which are both located in Seattle. Lastly, these are some of my favorite drawings that I did while I was in graphics. During my semester, we went to the Museum of the Rockies, and I managed to do these dinosaur observation drawings, which made me really consider proportion and layout, and I managed to create some really awesome drawings even if they're unfinished. So, what inspired me to do this lesson is this book about Sid Mead, an industrial designer turned movie concept artist. Unfortunately, Mead passed away last year, but his work remains iconic and an important part of the movie industry. Here are some of his pieces that I found quite inspirational. As you can see, he was a very talented artist and designer. One movie he is well known for working on is the original Blade Runner that came out in 1982. He manages to create these fantastical worlds through his designs that really immerse the viewer into something that could be a plausible reality, even if a bit dismal. Some other works include Tron Elysium and Blade Runner 2049. I think one thing that's important in presenting design drawings is how people are interacting with the architecture and their surroundings. It's easy enough to drag and drop scale figures into a model or drawing without giving them much context in way of using the space. When you create a space, you have an idea in mind of how someone might use it, so why not graphically show that thought process? Give figures a purpose to convey what you think should happen in those spaces. For example, Sid Mead's work on the movie Alien. Looking at each drawing, every figure has a purpose and is interacting with the spaces they're inhabiting. This helps give life to the drawing. So, the first thing that I want to talk about is the proportion of the human body. People have been trying to break down and understand the human body and its proportions throughout history. Le Corbusier's Modulor is one example I'm sure many are familiar with, or even the more well known Vitruvian Man by Leonardo da Vinci are people's attempts to understand proportionality in natural forms. But let's get back to the drawing. There are certain rules of thumb that are universal across the average human body. The first one that comes to mind is the head. I think that the head is a great starting point because that's where we use a lot of our senses, such as hearing or seeing, but it's also the area in which we communicate and think. Despite the head being at the top of the body, we tend to think of the head as the central core because that's how we perceive things around us. With that in mind, the body is roughly 7 heads tall and the shoulder width is about 2 heads wide. These are some basic proportions based on just the head that give the body its size, which is why I think it's a great starting point. Hands and arms are important to figure drawings because that's how we interact with our surroundings on a physical level. If you look at where your elbows fall, you'll notice that they fall right above the navel, just around the middle of your torso. Your hands reach down far enough so your palm is around the level of the crotch. One helpful piece of advice I can offer is to study your own body and proportions to get an idea of how you're built. Self-referencing is a great guide when beginning to look at anatomy. You'll start to notice things that you've probably never considered before, and these realizations can help guide you on drawing. Whenever I draw, I reference my own body constantly to make sure that the drawing is portraying natural human motions and movements. I like to think of the human body being composed of a bunch of hinges like a puppet. There's a distance and connection between each hinge, and that creates different forms of allowable movement. Next, I want to look at an example of what I'll call interconnective anatomy and how the body's form is affected by movement. In this example, I'm showing how the shoulders are affected by the movement of your arms in doing something like vigorous waving or stretching to reach up for something. Think of the shoulders as a seesaw, where the pivoting point is on your spine. If you were to reach up with one arm and stretch your side, you might notice that while one shoulder goes up, the other goes down. This is because your shoulders are connected directly to your torso, and when you stretch your arms, the torso shifts to accommodate these movements. This directly affects the shape of your upper body. And from here, I'll just apply this example to a quick figure drawing to demonstrate what this might look like. As you can see, this gives the figure a more dynamic pose that doesn't look like you just flipped an arm up on a mannequin or a doll. There's a more complex system here that will help bring your figures to life.
Okay, so today I'm doing something a little bit different.
Okay, so one important feature about the human body is the face. Facial expressions help denote emotions and feelings without verbal communication. And with graphics being about conveying ideas over visual stimuli, the faces can play a huge role in the drawing. Much like the rest of the human body, the face usually follows certain rules. Symmetry is very pleasing to the eye, and that's one thing to keep in mind with the face. When drawing the face, don't put all your effort into one side at first and then work on the other side later. Instead, work on both sides at the same pace so the quality is consistent. When I draw faces, I start with a circle and then I divide the circle into 4 equal parts through the middle. I tend to make the length of the head about 3/2 tall. From there, it's about the layout with the tangent lines on the bottom and sides. The tangent lines on the side stop when they meet the bottom of the tangent of the circle. From these points, lines can be drawn to the bottom of the head length, but make sure that they don't come to a point. One thing that I do is I draw a small oval where the chin is, because the chin is actually pretty round. The eyes fall just below the middle horizontal of the circle, and the nose starts at the bottom of the circle. The mouth is a little bit higher than the halfway point between the base of the nose and the bottom of the chin. As for ears, the top of the ear is at about the same level as the top of your eye, while the bottom of the ear is about the same level as the bottom of your nose. And again, these are just some overall rules that I've picked up myself over the years that I've been drawing. One thing that nearly everyone tends to struggle with is the hand. Hands are, for some reason, one of the most challenging parts of the body to draw. I've struggled with drawing hands for the longest time, and I still do sometimes. But when doing quick figure drawings, I usually refrain from drawing hands in too much detail. Instead, I usually draw something that's more like a mitten. This helps to create basic shapes of the hand, but still flexible. I'll show you this one exercise that I did where I trace my hand on paper quickly and then map out certain geometries within my hand. As you can see, it's broken down into 5 simple shapes. So this next hand that I'm drawing is a little more advanced. It starts off the same way as the last one, but this time you'll want to trace your hand while spreading your fingers. Your palm can be broken down into a simple pentagon shape, but what you need to understand is that there are 2 primary muscles in your palm, and that's how we get the overall shape of the hand. By attaching a triangle to the pentagon shape, we've created the base of the thumb. Next, we can go through and pinpoint the knuckles in our fingers and thumbs. This helps to familiarize yourself with the critical bending points. Without understanding this, drawing a convincing hand is a lot harder because it's easy to draw one that may look like it's broken. So now I'll jump into a demonstration to apply how I would go about creating a hand in a drawing on a figure. This figure will be doing a simple pose of using his thumb to point in a direction.
Okay, so today I'm doing something a little bit different. Okay, so today I'm doing something a little bit different.
With all that in mind, I'll go into figure drawing in space. What I have here is a simple interior design drawing that I created really quick as a basis for creating an interactive space that the figures can inhabit. In this drawing, I made the horizon line roughly 3 feet tall. This would be as if you're sitting on a couch or on the ground looking at the scene. The countertops and island are a little bit taller than 36 inches, but it'll work for what I'm demonstrating. The first figure that I want to draw will help establish the regulating height for the rest of the figures. He's going to be facing away from the viewer and interacting with the island in front of him, talking to another figure. I like to draw more social scenes where people are socializing and the architecture is helping with that setting. The second figure I started drawing was a little bit trickier for some reason. I was struggling a bit with the proportion of the lower half at first, but I managed to fix the mistake. For me, it's a lot of trial and error when doing more populated scenes. This figure is standing behind the island. Even with half of his body missing, I would still draw his whole body to help establish his position in space. Alright, so the third figure I want to draw is further back, leaning against the counter. If you're unsure of how the body might look leaning against the counter, I would recommend looking to real life for some reference. As you can see, I'm using the countertop height to help me figure out how tall this figure should be in the scene. The last figure I want to draw will be sitting on the counter having a conversation with figure number 3. When drawing figures at varying heights, it's important to remember that it's about understanding which parts of the body are folding and hiding versus what's staying the same. This goes back to the idea of the body being comprised of hinges. This first figure was easily drawn by using figure number 3 as a reference for height and moving the torso accordingly.
Okay, so today I'm doing something a little bit different.
Even after all of these tutorials and advice, the only way to truly improve your figures is to just practice. Draw people in your free time and start to understand how other bodies are constructed. I like to do quick sketches of strangers when I can because in that moment, it makes me break down their body into prominent geometries. We draw from real life, and people are great subjects when conveying everyday life. We draw from real life, and people are great subjects when conveying everyday life.